Welcome to this episode of First Home Hustle. I'm Kim McCarty.
And I'm Dave Stahl.
Today we're going to talk about fear in the market. So I think that this is a great topic for our current market and where we are.
I think it's important to timestamp it. It is,
Okay.
We're October 20th, 2023.
Okay, good
Okay.
timestamp. Okay,
Yep.
so October 2023, a good time to talk about fear in the market. I think fear in the market exists both on the buyer side and on the seller side. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay. All right, so let's dive into the buyer side of the fear of the market. Where is their fear right now?
Their fear is that I'm paying too much,
Okay?
my interest rate is too high, and oh my God, did you see my property taxes?
Okay. So three things.
Three things. Well,
Price,
and,
interest.
and insurance, because
Oh, yeah.
all of those things have gone up.
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's
at least in Texas.
for sure. And then that's going to be another episode we need to do is the insurance things.
Right.
Because those are going up really high.
Right.
Okay, so let's just take the top three. Let's take
Okay.
price, interest rate, and then also the property taxes.
Well, let's talk about property taxes first,
Okay.
because I think there's some solution in the market for that.
There is.
And it's coming, and hopefully we get this released in time for people to vote.
Right.
Because you actually have to vote for it in Texas.
Right.
There's a constitutional change that is allowing the homestead exemption to go from 40,000
To
to 100,000.
100,000.
And I actually have a spreadsheet for it. I'm sorry I didn't do the math, but the math that I had seen on a previous article is somewhere in the neighborhood of a $1,500 to $2,000 average reduction in property taxes.
Oh, that's huge.
Which that's a lot.
Right.
Especially when people are looking at values have gone up, taxes are based on a percentage,
Mm-hmm.
and even though this house is taxed at X this year, when I buy it, it opens the window for the county to reevaluate value.
Right.
And then I can put my homestead exemption on it.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Well, and the key there is that you did say homestead exemption. If you don't have that homestead exemption filed and on there, you don't qualify for that tax
Right.
reduction.
Right.
So I definitely want to make sure that people understand you got to file that.
Right. So
Okay.
but I think that we
I think
don't
it's
know what all
Proposition
the-
4. Is that what it's
Prop
called?
4, that's
Prop
exactly
4.
what it is.
Yeah, so Prop 4.
So vote yes. There's no tricky verbiage. It's yes,
Or no. And vote yes.
Yes gets you the tax break.
For sure. Okay. All right. So that's out of the way. Let's talk interest rates.
So interest rates, yes, scary thing,
Yes.
thing. I think we were just looking at a chart,
Right.
and I have seen numbers that say from 1970 to present,
Okay.
the average 30-year fixed rate is about 7.71%.
Okay.
Funny thing, today, October 20th, 2023, the 30-year fixed rate with good credit, about 7.75.
Okay.
So-
So we're very normal. It's very average.
Yes.
Okay. Very average.
I think the problem that we've got is we've got a whole generation that hasn't seen anything over 6%.
Ever.
Right. Well, yeah, the whole time that they've been in the market.
Yes.
Right. So you've got people that are like, oh, let me wait for interest rates to come down. Same
Yeah.
chart from 1970 to 1993. It took for rates on that cycle up to come back down.
Right.
So if you're waiting for rates to come down,
To buy a house.
you might be retired by then.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's say that again because I think that's important. If you waited for rates to come down in 1970, let's say you were in the market to buy a house, you would have waited till 1993 to have the interest rates go back to where they were in 1970.
Right.
So you would have waited 23 years to perhaps, if you're still alive, buy that house, right?
Right.
But what you forget happens is appreciation happens. Now, of course, we have market corrections where maybe prices do come back down at some point. But on average, most cities, most states see an average appreciation of what, 3 to 5%.
Yep.
Okay, so if we were to multiply that out over all those years, you really put yourself in a really bad
Well, that's why
position
you hear
waiting.
stories about my grandparents bought this house for $79,000.
Right.
Now it's worth $600,000 or $650,000.
Right.
Well, yes, they bought the house like in 1980.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, and that's the part that I think we're missing out on is that we're not buying the house to sell it in 6 months.
Right.
We're buying the house to live there for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. I mean, heck, the first house I bought in Texas, I think I lived there for 11 years and had planned on being there for 5.
Right. Right.
So, did I have equity? Yeah.
Right.
When I bought the house, did I have a 3% rate? No. So especially for this generation of people who's like, oh, I'm going to wait for it to come back down to where it was. It's never going back there.
No.
I mean, if it does, great.
But it could take 23 years. I mean, if we look at history, if you wait for 23 years for it to come back down to where it was in 2022, you're going to wait 23 years. If you look at the history of the way that interest rates work.
And you'd have been paying rent that whole time.
That's a lot. That is, and you've never put any equity into your pocket to turn around and sell it and have $300,000 extra in your pocket. Something, right? Yeah, I'm definitely going to want to come back to interest rates because I think it's important that we come back and talk about a little bit more about that. I think that's where buyers really get hung up. So I want to talk about that again. Let's switch to prices. So we looked at the average sales price just in Collin County, and the average sales price was $590 something.
Right.
Last year, 592. Last year, 593. Last year. This year, it's sitting at 580,000. So we're talking about $12,000, $13,000 difference.
Right.
But the average list to sales price is still at 98%. So agents are actually watching the market. They're doing the right thing. They're still pricing properties correctly, most of them. And buyers are having to pay close to full price. But what I don't think we see on that average sales price is if the seller is contributing some closing costs. And that's what I think that the buyers have an opportunity in the current market to tap into a little bit.
Right. Well, we're always going to be in a place where it's either going to be a seller's market or a buyer's market. And when you're in a spot where real estate is slowed down some,
right,
and you're thinking about buying, that's your best opportunity to buy. I mean,
absolutely.
like right now, I do investment property loans too, and investors are out in force, looking for those same homes that the first-time home buyers are looking at,
right?
And they're still getting those same concessions that those first-time home buyers want to get,
right, but
don't understand how to get because they're too worried about getting in.
Right. Right. Well, I think that this is an opportunity for those first-time home buyers, this market for sure, to say, okay, Mr. Seller, you've got your home priced at $450,000. I'm going to give you the $450,000, but I would like you to pay $3,500 in my closing costs or $4,000 in my closing costs, which is netting the seller just a little bit under full price.
Right.
That's why we're seeing that 98% or whatever, because they may be on the flip side giving a little bit of money to help the buyer with their closing costs.
Well, I think in some cases it might even be a little bit more than like the $3,500,
yeah.
But that's a fair example. So,
right.
I've got a client down South Texas, wanting to buy a house for $530, where that's what it's listed at. And I just told him, I said, I know you want to negotiate price, but what you should consider is maybe not just negotiate price, but negotiate cost.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, the market's not going to sustain high rates forever.
Right.
Because they're not going to be okay with the housing market just being shut down for years on end. That's
right.
not going to be okay.
Correct.
So what I've been telling a lot of first-time home buyers is let the seller pay for your costs now,
right,
so that when it comes time to refinance, you can pay those costs so that you get the full benefit of that lower rate at that time instead of paying costs twice.
Well, and I think when you look at a payment standpoint, if we have a house priced at $450, and I know we're not doing numbers on it, but let's just say I was able to get the seller to go down $10,000, okay, and I got it for $440. The difference in my payment isn't going to be substantial from $450 to $440.
Not the difference of getting $10,000 in closing costs.
Exactly. The time that it would take for you to absorb that $10,000 based on the difference. Let's just say it was $50 a month in a payment. $10,000.
It's $100.
Okay, make it easy math.
Yeah.
Okay, easy math. $100. Then that is the time it's going to take you to absorb that $10,000.
Yep.
Okay, which is
100 months.
It's a long time. It's 100 payments.
Right.
Right. And when people think about it that way, you're like, wait, 100 payments? Okay, how many payments do we make a year? 12.
12.
I mean, that's a lot of payment. So I always think about, let's not think about the price so much. So when buyers get hung up on price, I have the conversation of shifting and saying, okay, let's not get hung up on price. Let's get hung up on money out the door. Let's talk about that.
Money out the door and payment.
And payment.
Because
Let's talk about
those
that.
are the things that are important. Money out the door and payment.
Right.
Quit being focused on the price so much.
Price doesn't really matter.
Right.
Right. All right, then now let's circle back to those interest rates, because you kind of talked about it a little bit with, don't worry too much about the interest rate or the price, because you can always refinance that and get into a different rate. I know that when we bought our house that we're in now, I think our first interest rate, let's just say, was 7%, 6% maybe.
Okay.
We refinanced how many times? 3 times? Maybe
Something
4?
like that. Something
Since
like that.
we've been here, and
Yeah.
we've been here 18 years. Okay.
Okay.
So in those 18 years, we've refinanced 3 to 4 times. Now, a couple times was to do some updates, use that equity to turn around and put in new kitchen or new floors or whatever.
Right.
But we got a new lower interest rate with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do it again because the interest rate dropped enough that it made sense to do it again. So I think that that's what, buyers need to really understand, is that there is an opportunity in this market to get some of your closing costs paid for. Don't worry about the price. Don't worry about that interest rate. All of that can change, and you can readjust at that time.
The thing about purchase versus refi is that when you purchase, it's all about the cost.
Right.
I mean, 95% of the concern is cost. Here's what my payment is. What's the cost?
Mm-hmm.
When you do refi, it's about rate and cost.
Correct.
So on purchase, if you can stomach the payment, especially in this market,
Mm-hmm.
try to negotiate the seller paying for your costs so that when you go to refi, you're not paying those costs again. Have I said that like 3 times
I
now?
know, you have.
I think I have.
Okay.
Because that's critical, because if you think about that same price point of house, 582, if you put 20% down, the difference in 1% of interest, from now versus when you refi,
Right.
is probably $250 to $300 in payment.
Right.
Now, if rates do what everybody anticipates them doing by the end of next year, Mortgage Bankers Association has predicted like 6.1 by the end of next year. My guess is they're probably off by a little bit.
Okay.
So let's just say it's 6.5 instead of 6.1.
Right.
Right now we're at 7.75. We go to 6.5.
Is it worth refinancing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're going to do one of 2 things. You're going to either refi into another 30-year
Right.
and
Or
absorb some closing costs.
Right.
Or you're going to flip it to a 15-year and have, a payment that's likely very similar to what you've got now on your 30-year.
Okay. Well, and the other thing that I think is important, because this is, as first-time home buyers that we are talking about, if they purchase their first home, what I am encouraging my first-time home buyers to do is start a portfolio of investments right there with that very first home.
Right.
So if you look at that, let's just say that you stay in your first home 7 years. Well, in the 7 years that you're there, there is likely a very good opportunity for you to refinance into a lower rate. When you are ready to go buy your next home because you've outgrown the current home that you're in, you get to keep that lower rate that you're locked in at, and now you start charging your rent for your new tenant at whatever the fair market is, but you're at the lower interest rate.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of advantages for these first-time home buyers that if they just get in the market now, hold on to this real estate, they have just made themselves an instant portfolio of investment properties that you just can't get.
I also think that a lot of first-time home buyers think that they want to be in the same position that their parents in, but they're just starting. Does that make sense? So like my house I bought 10 years ago at 400.
Right.
It might be worth double that now.
Right.
There's no way that my
20-some-odd-year-kid
children just getting out of college, starting
Right.
their first job, going to
Can
buy a
afford
house,
such a thing.
should even be looking at that.
Right.
So if they're doing it the right way, they're starting on a lower end price point. Maybe they're not looking in Allen. Maybe
Right.
they're looking a little bit more rural.
Right.
Get in at the right price point so they have something that's affordable. So 10, 12 years down the road, if it takes them that long, they can then turn that out into an investment property and then step into the bigger property rather than stepping into the bigger property now.
Right, for sure.
You know, because, you know, I mean, if you think about it, you know, maybe when rates were at 3%, they could have stepped into a $600,000 house, but should they have?
No.
No.
I don't ever want to make people house poor. That's for sure. You know, you want to be able to go out to dinner, take a trip, whatever.
Well, but everybody always, when they call me, what's the most that I can qualify for?
Yeah.
The wrong question.
Right.
It should be, what should I be trying to qualify for based upon what my debt situation is now?
Right.
And that's why they have the debt to income limitations on all the loan programs.
Right.
Because they don't want you to go over that, because then you will be strapped.
Well, and I think that's what a good lender brings to the table, right? A good lender brings that to the table and says, listen, it's not really what your max that you can technically purchase. It's more about, let's make you comfortable in your monthly payment so that every month you're not struggling to make that mortgage payment. No one wants to feel that. They want to be able to make that mortgage payment and not even think about it. It
Right.
feels good to make it. It's the same conversation that I have with buyers when they come in. I'm like, you can buy any house that you want as long as you can afford the payment, right? It's like driving a car. You can drive the Mercedes if you want, if you can afford the payment. But what's wrong with starting with the Toyota? And start there and work your way up,
Well,
right?
I mean, what's wrong with these first-time buyers looking at homes that are similar in monthly expenditure as to what they were just
Paying
getting
in
ready
rent.
to pay in rent?
Absolutely.
Or maybe just a couple bucks more, not like doubling it.
No.
You know, and that's what I see a lot of times is people trying to get to the maximum that their debt ratio will allow,
Right.
rather than stepping into something where they can build equity. Later down the road, they can rent it out, and when they have more income, they can buy the bigger house.
For sure.
Instead of trying to have it all now.
For sure. All right, so let's just wrap it up. Fear of
Okay.
the market. Interest rates, prices, property taxes. We talked about property taxes. You know, nothing we can do about that, right?
Right.
Except for vote yes if you're in the state of Texas for
Prop
Prop
4.
4. And then interest rates and prices. They're going to do what they're going to do, right? So we can't wait and fear a market. We have to jump in if the time is right for us, financially or whatever. We have to jump in, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And if you look at history, and history typically repeats itself, the rates will come down. Will they ever go to that 2%? Who knows? 3%? Who knows? But they will dip back down at some point.
Right.
Don't wait for that to happen. If you're waiting for that to happen, it could be 23 years like last time. And what's going to happen in the pricing? The appreciation is going to happen. Even if the prices stabilize a little bit, appreciation will continue.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
That's where we're going to talk about insurance at a different time.
Yeah, we are. We're going to bring in an insurance agent and really have them educate us on what's going on in the insurance market, because I know I'm not versed enough to be able to explain all that.
All I know is just like everything else, prices have gone up.
But that one seems to be going up higher than most, in my opinion. But
I
what
don't
do I
disagree.
know, right?
I don't disagree, but I don't know all the
I
ins
don't
and
know
outs of
all.
why.
I don't
So,
know it.
all
All right. If you have questions and you are interested in purchasing a property, no matter where you are, we can help you. Give us a call at 214-662-9308 or.
And for financing, you can reach me at 972-896-8790.
Awesome. Thank you.